Hi, good morning, Robin. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm good. Welcome to Science Chat. And Robin Stolzberg has her degree from SUNY New Paltz. She has a BS in biology, and currently she owns her own company, and she is the lead consultant at RDS Consulting LLC. So, Robin, I'm just going to ask you to talk a little bit about um, your career journey so far, and you can talk about your current company and maybe how you got there and your experience, if you will.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. I want to say that I don't normally talk about my career uh, path often, but that would probably be a lie. And this is just something I was thinking about when I was just thinking what I wanted to share with this group, is that you really talk about your career path every time you interview for a job. And so you start with, they'll ask you, so tell me about yourself and tell me about your work experience. So before I start mouthing off my years of experience, I just wanted to start with, you guys are young, you're graduating college, in the next couple of years, if not this year. Start thinking about the work that you've done, whether it's an internship, whether it's research, whether you worked at the local supermarket, doesn't really matter. Every job you learn something that you like, you learn to do something well, typically, and then you learn things that you don't like. So start thinking about all of those now, because when you graduate, you're going to be asked about what you've done, even though you're first graduating school. So just sort of put those in your memory banks and have them ready to go. So with that, I'll start. I graduated SUNY New Paltz in 1988. I started in 84. Yes, I'm old. I know this, and I accept it, and I love it because it's made me who I am today. I worked hard to get out of New Paltz in 4 years. I knew I wanted to be a biology major right from the start. I was born with some health issues, and I knew I wanted to pay back that field. I just didn't know exactly where in that field I would be, and I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. And then I had my mother saying, well, what are you going to do if you're not going to be a doctor and you're not going to be a nurse? What are you going to do with a degree in biology? Oh, man, there is so much you can do with a degree in biology. After I graduated school, I took a job working for a company called Altana. They are now Novartis, if you've ever heard of Novartis, because pharmaceutical companies, they get bought out all the time. I spent 14 years there. I started off as a bench analyst, and through the years had 3 or 4 promotions to a lead analyst, and then I started working with some computer systems. Now, if you can imagine, back in the late 90s or so, computer systems weren't quite what they are today. Cell phones were just starting, and they were like this big. Heck, the computer at New Paltz took up the entire basement of the Student Union building. I mean, it was just ridiculous. The mainframe for that is just ridiculous. So I spent 14 years there learning good old-fashioned microbiology, and I say that because it has come so far in all these years. So I did antibiotic potency testing, and I did microbial limits to make sure that there weren't contaminants in like the topicals you would use on your skin and stuff like that. And then eventually I started working with a LIMS system, which is a laboratory information management system, and starting to work on that. It came to the point, though, we decided Long Island was very expensive, because I lived in Mount Sinai on Long Island. And so my husband had always wanted to move. So I looked at where, and he does transportation, so he could go anywhere. But pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, those sort of had, at that time, niche places. So I looked in North Carolina, I looked in Michigan, I looked in the Boston area. I was eventually decided to accept a job at a company called Wyeth Pharmaceuticals, and Wyeth actually does not exist anymore. They were bought out by Pfizer. And so I worked at Wyeth. I came in as a supervisor in their environmental monitoring and microbiology labs. And I worked in the labs for about 4 years. And then I moved over to take over their LIMS program. They had put in, again, a laboratory information management program. It all computer-based, so all their data in the labs that they generated, all their testing procedures, all their equipment was all linked into this computer system. So they went paperless. So everything was in that. And Wyeth at the time had 19 sites in the system. And our site was the premier site because we were the ones who kept pushing the envelope on what the system could do. And Wyeth eventually, like I said, was bought out by Pfizer, and I was actually captured in the layoffs that occurred from that, which I know this is going to sound horrible, or maybe you guys don't understand yet, but layoffs are supposed to make people sad. Not so much for me. My son was in first grade, and I got to spend a lot of time volunteering at the school and being the after-school mom and doing all that kind of stuff. And I would not go back and try to change that for anything. But eventually, sadly, I had to go back to work. And I went back to work as a supervisor in another micro lab for a company called Diosynth, which is actually now Fujifilm. Believe it or not, Fujifilm does run pharmaceuticals. And so I went back into the labs there because that's where really they had a need and I had a need for a job. Well, after about 2 years, 2.5 years there, I came out and took over the document control program. So Fujifilm, Diosynth, however you want to call them, they go by both. They were a CMO, a contract manufacturing organization. And so companies would contract for them to make their products in any phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, any of the clinicals, or actually for GMP for use in humans already. And so I took over their document management program there. So I was running their SOPs. I would create their batch records, all the kind of paper that goes along with that, and then their archives of all of that paper. We put in a new system, an e-system, an electronic quality management system to house that. So I went through validation of that system at that point, and that actually triggered me to pivot and do a career path change. That's where my career path change started, I should say. So we put in the system and I went through the whole validation because in the pharmaceutical world, data integrity is the key word for everything. And so you have to know that the systems you're using, whether it's equipment in the labs, whether it's software, whatever kind of system, even if it's a paper-based system, you have to know all the ins and outs and you have to have traceability. So there's a whole system to validate software that I learned in that process. So it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed that. But my tenure, I decided to move along from Fujifilm, and then I went to a company called BioAgilytics, where I actually took a job as a QA engineer, quality assurance engineer, doing computer system validation. And it was just so refreshing because what BioAgilytics is a CRO. They're a contract research organization, so they're a laboratory. So the Pfizers and the Mercks and the Kites and the Modernas, all of them, when they don't have testing capabilities, they farm it out to a company that's a CRO. And then that CRO is responsible for ensuring all their equipment is qualified, all their systems are validated, all that kind of stuff. So that's the job I stepped into. In that job, when I started, they were one facility in Durham, North Carolina, and I had moved from New York to the Carolinas. And they were one facility, and I was, I think, the 97th person hired. When I left there, technically I left there in February, but I didn't stop working there till June. They wanted me to transition out. Over the years, we became a global company. We had 7 sites globally. I went from being a QA engineer to being the global QA engineer director of all those sites. So I had 19 direct reports globally, and we were responsible for all the computer systems and all the equipment at all the sites. As you can imagine, that was a really, really big job. And it was all over the world. So we were in Australia, which is 16 hours ahead of us, Germany, 6 hours ahead of us, the West Coast here in the US, which is 3 hours behind us. It was I'm at a point in my life that I just, you have to learn what you want from each one of these jobs, and working 24/7 was not where I needed to be anymore. So I had made the decision to take my knowledge base and create my own company doing consulting work. I had come out of the labs, so I know lab work, I know pipetting, I know the lab processes, I know the software in the labs, the equipment in the labs. I went into quality assurance, where now I know all the processes that ensure the quality, the CAPAs, the change controls, the deviations, the investigations, the documentation processes, all that good work. And then with all the software that came on, and so I created a company now that does computer system validation and quality management systems. And I thought I was going to actually drop down in my number of hours working, but for better or for worse, I'm still working a lot of hours. So, which is a good thing for a business. So that's how I got from being a college graduate to owning my own business, and how I pivoted. And I don't know if Dawn is going to ask me questions or not, but she sent some questions to me that, I might want to discuss. So Dawn, if you're okay with those, I'll just go through a few of those and give my thoughts and opinions. Is that a good?
Yeah, I just was thinking as you were speaking that, when you're your own boss and have your own business, it is a lot of work, and you know that firsthand. And just wondering if there's a skill set, that some things that you didn't realize, or that you have to now do in your own business, and to share that with students maybe.
Absolutely, and that's the sort of the piece that I was going to go to next. So thank you for that segue. So it's something I actually learned early in my career, is that, you have people who clean the bathrooms, you have directors, you have CEOs, COOs, you have people who work in, all different kinds of jobs at a company. And honestly, I can tell you right now, if the company didn't need people to do that, they wouldn't have hired them. And what I learned early in my career is whether you've been hired to clean the bathroom, or whether you've been hired to be CEO of the company, you have a job and you are needed at a company. Therefore, it doesn't really matter what your job is. You should get the same respect that the CEO would get, as well as people doing maintenance. The company needs all of these people. And something I learned early on in my career was that just because you don't have a director title or CEO title or COO or CIO or CPO, this is a new one, Chief People Officer. I keep thinking of Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars, right? Yeah, with C-3PO. Anyway, so what I've learned is that everybody needs to be treated with respect, and maybe you even make a friendship with all different levels. If you are seen as somebody who will only answer to somebody with a title, or only respond to somebody with a title, well, you won't be seen as a team player or really somebody to really be considered as a leader. And so one of the biggest things is that you need to treat everybody with respect, and you never know where that person is going to wind up. If you're coming in and you're saying hello to everybody, and honestly, I'm going to share this with you because I think it's important because you guys are New Yorkers. I'm talking to the SUNY New Paltz. I went there. I understand, actually, I was up there 2 summers ago. I was showing my son around campus and stuff. Is when I took my job at Wyeth and I moved down here, about a month or 6 weeks into my tenure at my job, I was called into my manager's office, and I was talked to. Well, a New York attitude of just walking by and not looking at people and not saying hello as you pass them is not acceptable. And so I was taught very quickly that you say hello to everybody, you treat everybody with respect, because otherwise you're going to be seen not in a good light. So that was a really big thing. And honestly, it's something I've told a lot of people is when the FDA, because I work in a field that's regulated by the FDA, when they come in to do an audit of your building, they can meet the CEO, the COO, your VP of quality, and everything is going great and all that good stuff. They go to the bathroom and the bathroom's a mess. Well, that's going to send them down. They can think all the, great and everything, but if that's a mess, they're going to think, what are your labs like? What is your manufacturing floor like? So again, everybody is really important at a company. And you don't know when you go to switch jobs, who's going to be working at that next job, that they're going to say, hey, you worked at that company. Tell us about that person. And so your soft skills, and I know that soft skills have come in favor and out of favor and in favor and out of favor over the years, but I highly recommend the soft skills, how you treat people, how you talk to people, how you interact with people, that you guys really hone up and understand those. And they translate into your own business, because if I didn't have the ability to have people, to talk to people, to work with them, to show them that I'm a team player, that I can do my job and actually lead a process, well, I wouldn't have as much work as I have, because I've been really lucky that a previous COO, as soon as he heard that I was out on my own, he pulled me in to his work. And I have a previous CIO who left the company who I used to work for. Now I'm doing work for his company. So it really, you never know where it's gonna to lead you. Those are it's a really big point that I wanted to bring up and tell you guys.
It's so true. Thank you for mentioning that. And I know we talk about transferable skills and soft skills and team player, and even from my perspective of working here, you definitely know who the team players are within your office. But and we have a great team, so we're all team players here, I can say. But even like other people you interact with, you can 100% tell if someone is only interested in answering to the top levels, or if they're there when you reach out without ego to get the job done. And so I love that you said that, because I think sometimes before you get out there, you think of team player as a word to use on the interview. And it's definitely what you've been saying is, respect everyone and be a team player means get the job done, do your part, and kind of do it with grace. Or, just nobody is better than anyone else. You just have different roles.
Exactly.
So thank you for that. Thank you. Let me see. I mean, when you started out, did you ever think you were going to own your own company?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not sure that I truly like it, because it is a lot of work and going out and meeting and greeting. Actually, I'm leaving later today for a conference down in Florida. It's a validation, digital validation AI conference for the next few days. So, I never thought I would own my own business. And honestly, when I first started, you could ask anybody back in the day. It's like, I never want to be a director. I never want to have that much responsibility. And, when you're seen as a leader, you don't always have the choice not to take their job. It sounds horrible. It's good and horrible. It's like when you're seen as a leader and you do not need a title of supervisor, manager, director, CEO to be seen as a leader. If you come in and you have a positive attitude and you're willing to help and you know what you're doing, and even if you don't, if you say, teach me and I'll help you. I mean, those are leadership qualities that are seen no matter what your title is. And so sometimes when you have leadership qualities, you're pulled along that line, and you don't always have, you could say, no, I don't want to be a leader. Don't promote me to director, but that's not going to get you out of the work, because if you're seen as a leader, you're going to be treated as a leader no matter what your title is. So I don't remember exactly where I was going off this path, but yeah.
Just, did you ever think you'd be
Right.
owning a company? I have one question also. Over the years, you've been interacting with different generations.
Oh,
because
yes.
So any tips for how to work with different generations? Because we're all out there, and it's always changing.
That's a really good question. I've actually, when I worked at Wyeth, they gave managers training on how to deal with different generational, because this is gonna sound horrible too. So in my generation, I was taught that you got in, you worked hard, you stayed at the same company, you did the best job you could, and when you retire, you're gonna have your pension and you're gonna have a great life. Well, pensions don't exist very much anymore, and the whole mentality of staying at a company forever doesn't really exist anymore. And now there's at least, I think, 2 generations behind me, and every generation really does have their own work ethic. And as a manager of people, or as a person coming into the work field, you need to respect the different ways that people work, because it's generational. If you go and speak to your grandmother or your grandfather or your great-grandma or great-grandfather, they're going to tell you stories about when they were young and their jobs, and you're going to respect them. Well, the people in the workplace will have those same kind of stories. They may be a bit younger, but coming out of school and starting a job, I bet you bottom dollar that you're going to be working with grandparents. There are people who are my age. Unfortunately, I'm not a grandparent yet, but my son is just a senior in college now, so I'm not quite there yet. But there are people my age, and I'm happy to say that I'm 57 years strong going on, that are grandparents. So you're going to be working with those people and your parents. Think about your parents and their work life, and them getting up every morning, getting you out to the school, then going to work. There's different generations want to be treated, and for better or for worse, the current generation, there are a lot of the current generation, meaning people coming out of school now or within the last 6 years. The mentality is that the people coming out are seen as, I want to get in, I want to work for 6 months, and I want a promotion. And then I want to work for 6 months again, I want a promotion. And after 3 months, I should get a raise. This is not truly the way corporate America works. You have to get in, you have to learn what you're doing. It's typically a year at a job before you get to move on. And this is not me and my business. This is the last 40 years of working that I've learned this. And to get a promotion, you have to sort of be doing that next level before you get there. And for better or for worse, that's the way it is. And so now, I'm not saying everybody in the generation is like that. Not at all. Please But I think it's I like to be honest, and there is a perception out there for the early 20 mid 20s on how people think when starting a job. And jobs, you can come in and learn for a year and move to the next job and move to the next job and move to the next job. And honestly, that's the way it is these days. To get higher salaries and better positions, usually you have to switch a job. But get in there and learn, and respect the way the different generations work, and the different work ethics. And remember, like I said, when I was in college, the entire basement of the student union building was the mainframe computer. Just think about that. There were no phones in any of the dorms except for pay phones in the common areas, that type of thing. So things have, hugely changed, as you all, I'm sure, are aware. So respect what other people have gone through, because I guarantee you, in 40 years in your work career, it's going to be completely different. And those kids coming out of school then will be like, really? That happened to you? And
Yeah, thank you for that. And every generation has their value and their own experience. And I think, it's so important for us all to figure out how to work with each other. That is super. Also, with the kind of wanting to move up or get a salary increase, I think it's important, like you said, go in, learn, and then you just show your value before you're considered for something more. But thank you for that. I think you've helped us so much because you've answered all the questions in your answers. So I think I'll ask you if there's anything else you want to share, and then we'll jump off.
So just two things, if I have another 2 minutes. One of the questions that you sent are, what experiences would you recommend, while they're school? So honestly, internships and research, if you're in the science fields, the sciences are there's so much you can do with them, whether you're in environmental monitoring, whether you're working in ADA or NAB assays, and I know that I'm throwing things out there that you may not understand, but there's just this broad range. Do you want to work in a chemistry lab, a microbiology lab, a gene and cell therapy lab? There's so many different things out there. Do you want to work in a lab at all? There are other parts of science that are not lab related type of thing. And so really go out and find an internship, find some research, something, and try different ones. I wouldn't go back to the same internship year after year, even if they love you and they want you back. Go in. If they love you, great. Go somewhere else the next year. Let them love you there. Go somewhere else the next year. Let them love you there. And then maybe you have 3 job offers when you graduate college, and you know where you want to go, because there's so much that can be done with the sciences. It's absolutely crazy the amount of opportunities when you have a degree in science where you can go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you don't know where you can go if you don't go other places to learn where you can go. So that's awesome advice.
And the one last thing is that when you see change coming, don't be afraid to pivot if that's what you want to do. So I'm a microbiologist. That's what I came out of school doing. That's a lot of what I still consider. But I also do computer system validation. I saw the world changing, and I pivoted when I had the opportunity to go to that, and that's where my business lies now. So if you see changes on the horizon, don't be afraid to take your knowledge base and pivot it to go another direction, because it just makes your resume look better. It makes you more rounded, and it's easier when you're looking for work or trying to get clients, when you can talk to them on myriad of topics. And that's where I'll end.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Robin. And for everyone, thanks for joining us on another session of Science Chat. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Robin.
Bye.